Hello and welcome to the Wedding Dish podcast. Grab your fork and knife and take a seat at our table as we dish on all things wedding. You'll hear stories and tips from real couples and wedding pros about love, life, and entrepreneurship. I am Sarah Alopin, your hostess with the mostest on the Wedding Dish podcast and the CEO of both Photos from the Harney and District Bliss. We have our little French bulldog buddy snoozing behind me here, and he is just going to be a snorosaurus. I can tell already. So get ready for some background French bulldog noises. Before we get started, if you haven't listened to last week's episode, you've got to check it out. It's actually my blind react to the Vogue 2026 wedding trends. I do this every year. If you haven't heard me do it before, it's just always interesting to me what they choose. So you'll get my unfiltered reactions for that. Flag it, go back later and listen to that. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the Wedding Dish. Today, we are dishing with an elopement photographer who is passionate about helping others achieve their dreams, even when they're scary, and live life on their terms. The human behind Emilee Setting Photo. Emilee, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
I am so excited about this episode. I really love what you are doing. Your work is stunning, and I can't wait to hear more.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited too.
So you specialize in elopement photography, and I'd love to start with one of the foundations of elopement planning before we dig into the details and the fun stuff. I mean, this is fun stuff too, but with increasing popularity in outdoor elopements, could you shed some light on what the difference is between having your elopement in a national park, a national forest, a state park, or BLM land? And would that matter to our engaged couples?
Yeah, so I actually have a lot of couples that have no idea where to start. I think they will get an idea in their head and kind of start looking into how to do it. So, national parks are so popular, couples will look into that first, and you'll find a lot of different regulations. Each park specifically is really different. So, your super popular ones like Mount Rainier actually have predetermined locations that you have to pick from for your ceremony. After that, you're welcome to explore the park and keep taking photos. But, those predetermined spots, they have group sizes that you have to abide by. They also have some
Oh,
of them you can only start your ceremony at 6 p.m., which I actually really love. I love a good sunset ceremony. You're going to get
oh
way less
yeah.
crowds. So, national parks are iconic. They're easy access. I think that's why people love them. The roads are paved, there's facilities, you can get food, you can get a drink, and you can use the bathroom in a normal bathroom, because once you're in a national forest, you might be hiking up that wedding dress in a pit toilet, which is definitely a part of the adventure elopement experience. But that's kind of more what happens in a national forest. Those are much more relaxed surrounding regulations. So most, not all, but most national forests don't require a special use permit under 75 people. And most
Oh wow.
elopements stay under 25 people, in my opinion.
Oh,
So from there, you only really have to deal with the fact that it's more remote. There's usually less drive up accessibility. You're normally hiking those back roads, they're dirt, they're bumpy, and you don't have those same facilities. And oftentimes you're out of service. So it can be a little bit harder to coordinate with, say, like an officiant if you hired one, and finding them, just those things. So BLM land is the easiest. I feel like BLM land is kind of just like, it's not, but it feels like no man's land. You know, People kind of do whatever they want on BLM land, which, we should all respect. Leave no trace principles, no matter where you are. But they are the least regulated. You have lots of BLM land out in the desert. Like, there's so many stunning elopement locations, say in like Arizona and Utah on BLM land. And it's just super easy. Some of those areas might not even have pit toilets at all. So you just got to kind of come ready with that stuff. And then state parks are kind of a good middle. less regulated, but still easy access, right? So you have paved roads, you have park rangers who can answer your questions. You're still going to need a special use permit, but it's a bit less regulated than the national park. So a nice little middle if you want easy access, facilities, but not maybe the insane crowds and super heavy regulations of big national parks. So those
Oh,
are the main options.
okay. That's so interesting. And I'm sure you run into a lot of this being based in Bend, Oregon. So I feel like you have some really good insight on that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely. We have a lot of national forest here, which makes eloping in Bend pretty easy, I'd say. They're just kind of like, okay, yep. I call every year just to make sure nothing has changed. And then they're like, is it under 75 people? And I'm like, yep. And they're like, okay, cool. Get after it.
Yeah, that's we need to pause on that for a second because I do that too. I always call in advance for like we do a lot of stuff. I'm in DC, so we photograph at Library of Congress, which does not require a permit. However, and they like totally fine with it, whatever. But every time I email them up front and I'm like, hey, I just want to let you know I got my ticket for like this time and I'm coming with this amount of people. Please let me know if anything's changed and that kind of thing. And that is such an important point because there's nothing worse than finding out that something changed when you arrive. So great tip on that too.
Yeah, yeah. And then there is like a kind of secret fifth option for elopements. I don't think I
Ooh,
originally mentioned this to you, but it's pretty cool. It's the private land option. So, especially like internationally, you can rent out a villa or a chalet, and sometimes as well in the States, like an Airbnb that's on. I've seen some that have like 30 acres of private land with their own lake and waterfalls and mountain views. And yeah, no permits, no other people. You just make sure that the host is okay with it. And that's a really cool option too. Little secret option.
yeah, I love that. Because, I mean, yeah, yeah, great little secret option there too. And where would you recommend that couples start planning when they're thinking about how doing it, like eloping?
Yeah. So, I mean, truthfully, having a vision is a good place to start, but I know how I do things, and I think other elopement photographers do it really similarly, where getting on a call with a photographer usually isn't supposed to be an insane commitment. Maybe not everyone feels that way, but it's nice to talk to a photographer who does this all of the time because there's no real blueprint for eloping. So a lot of photographers can kind of get an idea of what setting you're looking for and tell you a little bit about the best seasons for it. See, for example, I get people from the East Coast constantly who are interested in, say, Glacier National Park, and they're hoping for the beginning of June. And it's like, that's so not going to happen because you're not getting up into those mountains until maybe mid July, sometimes later because of late snowmelt. So sometimes just talking to a professional in the field is the most helpful. But if you feel like you want a starting place, I would say kind of looking into locations. There's so many guides online, kind of getting your idea of what your budget might be and what dates you're open to. So having a bit of a flexible place to start with, these are the spots we like, this is the budget we think would make the most sense, and having a few dates that you like is probably a good place to start when you're gathering information. But then I'd say talking to a photographer will help so much.
Yeah, especially if you can articulate what it is that you like about that location. So if you
Mhm.
aren't able to get in there because of late snowmelt, that the photographer can give you suggested alternatives that are going to be in that same sort of vision that you have. So being able to articulate that is probably also very important. I would say, because your vendor is going to know going to have other options for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I travel for work, but all of us are based somewhere. And I would say most of us, elopement photographers, have our main location that takes up, I would assume more than 50% of your bookings per year. So say you want to elope in Utah, talking to a local Utah elopement photographer, they're going to have all the best information. They're going to know everything about the permit system. They're going to know all of the best little hidden gem spots, the weather patterns, like if you want to see the salt flats when there's a little bit of water on them so they're reflective. No one's going to know that better than someone that lives in Salt Lake City and photographs elopements. So starting out with local vendors is a good choice, in my opinion.
I agree. Very, very good advice. Um, Paint us a picture here. What does an elopement look like when it has all of the bells and whistles?
So I have seen people go all out, but always in different ways. It's so cool. I mean, sometimes couples will do a multi-day elopement and they'll go and they'll fly first class. They'll get a beautiful place to stay. I love this one villa that I shot at in Greece. They had their own private hot tub and pool overlooking the ocean. It was gorgeous. Getting the vendors that you like, hair and makeup, and, you know, beautiful meals, private chef coming in and doing that for you. But not only that, with a 2-day elopement, you are kind of almost getting the experience of like a honeymoon too. And I mean, with this couple specifically, we went and explored. They went cliff jumping in Amouti Bay. They did sunrise at Red Beach, all these different fun things. So you can incorporate different vendors, the place that you'd want to have a honeymoon in. I've seen couples get like private massages the day before. So all the bells and whistles, for elopements, it is always going to be different. There's people who have the full on helicopter elopements, stay in a gorgeous A-frame in Alaska, and then go on a cruise the next day. That to me is kind of what I've seen as not as big as you can go, but it's just a super experience forward day, and you're kind of paying for the best of what you can get in that experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Experience forward is a great way of putting it. I was just going to ask you, and what are we looking at in terms of budget on that?
So I would say this elopements, it's such a tricky range. And I think things are always changing, especially the economy always seems so weird to me lately. I have no idea what's going on ever. But it seems like when someone just wants, a photographer, the courthouse, and to run around that city where they did the courthouse marriage, you can get away with just a few grand. Um, I would say the bigger budgets that I've seen are around 25,000. That's like your first class plane tickets, your really gorgeous villa. If you're having guests, like private catering for all of them, and or you're staying at a resort and you have this little welcome brunch and like massages for your few guests, like things like that. I think can still fall into that $20,000 range, because sometimes I have couples share with me as we're planning what their budget is, since I help them look into lodging and flights, all this different stuff that I can help. So I'm like, hey, do you mind sharing your budget? And the really kind of bougie ones that I've done have been in that range. I do think it's still really cool though, because I think as it stands, the average wedding budget is still like, I think it's 35,000, you might know. Um,
Here it's more. Here
is
it's
that
like
the average?
75.
Average?
I think
Holy.
so, yeah. If it's like in DC, yeah. I mean, if you're expanding into Northern Virginia and into Maryland, into like, vineyards or something, it's going to change. But I think in DC proper,
Yeah,
it's
maybe it's gone up
75.
in like the California area as well, but I've always used that as a point of reference. So like an average wedding budget being like 35 to 40, that's for like maybe 100 to 200 people. And that doesn't always feel like enough when it comes to a big venue and food. And that's a sucky feeling. But, a top tier luxury, high budget for an elopement gets you like all the craziest stuff you can want, and is still typically a bit cheaper than the average wedding, which I think is kind of cool. I don't think elopement should be about cost saving personally. I think it should be about getting the experience you want, but it is kind of a nice perk.
Yes, I
Yeah.
agree. It's like a bonus. Like, oh,
Yeah.
and we are saving money.
Yes. Yeah. And, getting all of the nicest things that we could want if you're working with that like really nice budget.
Yeah, totally, totally. And when couples want to include their family, because I think a lot of us think of like that minimal, courthouse where it's just the couple, just the photographer, and just going to the courthouse when we think of elopements, or we think about those iconic like views for event or elopements, but we don't really think about incorporating guests. So if they want to include family while still having a portion of the day for themselves, let's say like private vows, what advice would you give couples that want to be able to include people but have private time as well?
Yeah, I think just having a day that kind of does both. So, one of my favorite things that a couple will do is they'll get ready separately because, there's still so many like core things that feel like weddings. So, they'll get ready separately and then we'll go somewhere really pretty for a first look. And they do their first look. And I've had couples do their private vows right then and there in this really beautiful spot. I always recommend two couples that want to do that, like pick a vacation rental that is in a beautiful area so we can do it on that property, get really nice views. And after that, they'll normally rejoin their families and go somewhere really cool for a ceremony. Now, it's funny because it's like a double ceremony, but I love how this works. You have the opportunity to say your vows privately to one another, and then you'll have your officiant. With elopements, it's usually a friend or
Hmm.
family. Say your ceremony for you. And most couples then choose to keep their vows private and then just have the officiant kind of take over from there and do the ring exchange, the kiss. I've seen hand fasting and all types of fun stuff so that you can still have your family and get that peace alone. After that, I've seen a lot of couples kind of celebrate a bunch of different ways, picnics, food, little group hike, so many fun things. And then normally the couple will break off for like a sunset hike, or sometimes it's not even a hike. Sometimes it's wandering or driving around, finding pretty spots, exploring, listening to music, doing a first dance, taking pictures. And then, maybe my coverage ends and they go home to have a party with the people that were there with them at their vacation rental. Again, always with host approval, but stuff like that is such a beautiful blend to include friends and family day of, but get some solo time. I love that. And then some couples do the 2-day elopement route where they have a day just for them and then they have a day with their friends and family.
I love that. That's a great suggestion. I mean, all of these feel very much like you're getting the best of all of the, like all the worlds, not just both worlds, multiple.
Multiple
It's more
universes,
than two.
the best of the multiverse.
Yes. Bringing my love of comic books onto the podcast.
Uh,
I love it. Well, Emilee, what final advice would you have for couples who are considering elopements and maybe haven't really gotten too far into the consideration process yet?
so I think one of my best pieces of advice is, and it's going to sound kind of cliche, is go with your gut, especially when it comes to who you want to invite. I know it is so difficult, but the amount of guests that you bring along will heavily affect your location options and then even things like your budget. And yeah, when it comes to the right location, some guests won't have hiking ability. Some will be scared to go on like these forest roads, and some can't deal with like high elevation spots. And then there's some spots around regulations. So, I think the idea with elopements is that you can prioritize yourself, right? So just bear in mind that the more and more guests you include, the less you'll be able to prioritize yourself. And I'm not saying, hey, screw your friends and family, don't invite them. I personally want like a 35 to 40 person thing, but that's why I'm going to pick the private property option. So be ready to, as you invite more guests, plan a little bit more heavily around them. And that's okay. It's totally doable. I help couples do that all the time. Just go with your gut. If you want to prioritize you, it probably has to be less people. I think that's my main thing that I'd say.
I think that that's That's a great piece of advice. And I love that you just gave us a little insight into what you will eventually be doing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Emilee, for joining me on the Wedding Dish today. Where can our listeners find you online?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So my Instagram is Emilee Setting Photo. My website's Emilee Setting. Everything surrounding me is just my name, which makes it pretty easy.
I love it. Does make it super easy. And we will, of course, tag you on our Instagram at the Wedding Dish Podcast. And if you would like to apply to be a guest on the Wedding Dish, you can visit us at theweddingdishpodcast.com and fill out that guest application. And don't forget to tune in next week. We have another amazing guest. We're dishing with Daniel, who is talking all about the guest experience in terms of entertainment, which I think a lot of times we talk about guest experience in terms of decor. So it's a very, very fun episode. And give us a follow, rate, and review on your preferred podcasting app. Emilee, thank you again so much for joining me. This was so fun. And I can't wait until we can dish again.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. It was a super good time.
Yay! Thanks, everybody. Cheers.